What's up, everybody, and welcome to Truth with Tara. I'm Tara Simon, and today I have country singer-songwriter with a 5-octave range and longtime vocalist for Home Free, Mr. Tim Foust. Hey, Tim, how are you? And thanks for being here today.
Howdy, Tara. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Already, I can hear your low voice. Howdy, Tara. Thanks for having me. Did you always have that low voice when you were a kid, or did at some point it just sort of click on for you?
No, late bloomer.
Really?
Total late bloomer. Yeah. I mean, like well after all of my peers' voices had changed. I was short and had a really high voice. And then like late into high school, I sprouted a voice and height.
Guys, don't ever underestimate or judge a book by its cover, because Tim was like, hi, I'm Tim Foust, till he was like 17. And then, hi, I'm Tim Foust.
Pretty much. I mean, it was like, like that Brady Bunch, like kind of like comical voice change thing. And then it was literally from one year to the next. So it happened during a summer.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So you came back to
the
school.
next year like a different human.
What did your friends do, or people that didn't see you or hear you over the summer?
I freaked them out.
Now, how was your girl game? Did it help it or did it hurt it?
I don't think it hurt it.
It can't hurt, right? That's so funny. So, Tim, you have a really fascinating story that I know our listeners are going to get so much from. And so I really kind of want to start you from the beginning of it. Like, just start me from the top, like point A. How did you start singing? And tell me from there to now how you ended up where you are in Home Free, which is a wildly successful a cappella group. Your range is extensive. You don't just sing low. You really actually sing everything, which is super impressive to me. So tell me, what's your deal?
My mom sang to me as a baby, and I'm told that I was singing along and matching pitch before I could form words.
So cool.
And so I don't really remember a time not singing. And when I got to elementary school, I mean, starting as early as kindergarten, my music teacher would always have me sing a solo, in the little music productions you do in school.
Okay.
And I just didn't question it. It felt like an assignment or something. And so I just did what I was asked to do. And I really credit her and thank her to this day for making me comfortable on stage in front of people. She's still in my life. So if you see this, shout out to Miss D Hart.
Miss D Hart, thank you for changing lives. I mean, seriously, you teachers out there that are watching and listening to this, man, like, imagine the difference that you're making, the ripple effect that it has. This one woman, I mean, without that, who knows where you would have been? That's amazing.
Yeah, there's these two teachers that honestly are responsible for where I am, and one of them hates it when I say that. But let's see. So I grew up performing. I also was raised in the Church of Christ, and I don't know if you're familiar with that denomination, but it's all a cappella.
Yes.
The song service, is just the congregation singing in 4-part harmony.
Right.
So I was very comfortable with harmony at a young age, and it developed my ear.
Yes.
Because I'm always like listening and picking out the different parts. And
yeah, come by it honestly, huh?
As a young child, also my mom played me a lot of the oldies, like the vocal groups, the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. And my grandma played me a lot of Southern gospel stuff. And that has a ton of harmony too. And I was always fascinated with like the freaky low basses in Southern gospel. So I think I willed myself to being a bass, honestly.
Now, you couldn't sing those notes then, though, right?
No, so squeaky back then. And
so funny.
And so I did choir all the way through school. I was very fortunate because the woman I mentioned earlier, Renee Close, who ended up being my high school choir teacher, I also had her in middle school. So starting in 5th grade, I had her. And then my 7th grade year, or going into my 8th grade year, she moved to the high school. So I ended up having her for like 8 years, and she made the biggest impression on me. She taught me sight reading and ear training.
Wow.
And
something most kids don't get anymore.
Yeah. And starting in 7th grade, I started like competing and auditioning for all region choir and stuff like that.
Yep.
And fortunately, down in Southeast Texas where sports is king, there was actually a budget to get voice lessons for kids who made it to all region choir.
That's very unique. I've not heard of that.
I know.
That's amazing.
I did all region choir, anything music related you could do vocally from seventh grade all the way through high school. And that's where like the bulk of my formal training. I didn't study music in college.
Wow.
Um, and so I learned all the really important fundamentals of singing healthfully.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And choir.
and yeah, I mean, starting all the way back in middle school, I would have a couple buddies that we would just like harmonize together. We had a little trio, and we were just super influenced by like Boys to Men and All for One.
Oh my gosh,
Every time they
yes.
released an album, we'd go to try to find the acapella track,
Oh my
and then do our
gosh.
little watered down trio version of it. And then once I got to high school, just kind of continued that trend and had a couple buddies that would harmonize with. But mostly it was like super casual, just like back of the bus on choir trips and stuff like that.
Right.
The three
Yeah.
of us would just
So
be
fun.
harmonizing for fun. And Miss Close, my choir teacher, pulled me aside and said, you guys like are actually really good at that. I would encourage you to find a fourth person and like learn some songs, like maybe some Christmas songs, because people would
Mm.
probably hire you
Oh,
during the
yes.
Christmas season to like just do what you're doing for fun.
So smart. I love
And
that.
so we did what she said and it worked. We started like, so like I'm in high school and all of a sudden I get a taste of getting paid to do what I love.
What
I'm
you
just
were
like
already
getting
doing
paid
on
to
the
do
back of
my
the
hobby.
bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that your teacher gave you a suggestion, and the most important sentence in that whole story within your big story is we did what she said. We
Pretty
just
much.
simply we took the advice. We did because I find that a lot of artists have a lot of talent, but the lack is in the execution, the follow through, just simply following the advice or getting up earlier, and working a little harder, that grit, compassion with hard work over time, And I love that that was your opportunity to see the monetization possibilities of your talent and your passion mixed together. That's so good.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if I would have ever gotten there without her,
Mm.
because Southeast Texas, pre internet, let's talk about that. And so I just didn't really know outlets,
Yeah,
for singing. I
right.
was just ignorant. And, I thought, okay, your options are you get a record deal or you go on Broadway. And outside of that you get a real job.
Most people think that's still
Yeah.
so. Hmm.
And, and then I remember this touring production of Grease came through Southeast Texas and had some heavy hitters in it. And so we just like I don't even know what came over us, but we knew what day it was like getting to town, and we went to the theater and just like barged in and just like talked to the producers, and we were just like, hey, we're a vocal group and we do some oldies, and like, is there any way we could open up for Grease? Which, just saying it now, sounds insane. Like Broadway shows don't have opening acts, but we
That's
were just like,
ballsy.
and they were like, well, sing something. And we
Oh,
did. And they were like, yeah,
oh my gosh.
I know.
Wow.
And so we did. We got to open up for Grease, like an actual, touring Broadway production. It had Cindy Williams in it, who was Shirley of Laverne and Shirley.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was like our first time kind of doing something in front of that big of an audience too, like a sold out theater.
Right. It's a captive
Um,
audience too, because they didn't necessarily come to see you, but they're still seeing you, very much watching, very much paying
yeah.
attention.
And the
Wow.
cast like heard the story, of course, because they're just like, who are
Yeah.
these ballsy kids?
Right.
And
Right.
so they ended up watching, and then afterwards they like asked us to hang out, and then they were like, well, we're doing some other shows like nearby, like you want to like kind of come on tour with us a little bit. So we did a few stops of
I
Greece,
just got
which was
goosebumps.
wild.
Oh my gosh. That's
um,
amazing.
and then I kind of found out what some of them were making as well, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Oh.
okay.
Okay.
And so it just all started to like open my eyes of things outside of the box.
Yeah. The
um,
possibilities that
the
you didn't even know
possibilities.
existed. Mm.
um, but strangely enough, I sort of like burnt myself out on music in high school.
Mm.
Doing
Mm-hmm.
regular choir, show choir, all region, area, state, solo and ensemble.
That's a
This
lot.
this other project out of high school, and so when I went to college, I was a pre-dental major.
Shut the front door.
True story.
Pre-dental. Could you have found anything more out of left field?
I know. Well, you know, it was told myself, all right, I want to do something lucrative, stable. My plan was to be an orthodontist because I didn't want to deal with any real nasty stuff either. Like I'll just
Yeah.
straighten teeth, you know.
Right, right. That's
But I
smart.
like
I hear you.
people, so I'll get to work with people, and
Mm.
I don't know what I was thinking. That was my plan. I only lasted a year and a half.
I am
Um,
surprised it lasted that long, to be honest with you. That's extraordinary.
yeah, and so my first semester just no music,
Wow.
and
How'd you feel?
then
How'd that make you feel? Did you enjoy the break or were you like, what did I do?
I guess I kind of enjoyed the break. I mean, I'd started songwriting at that point, so I'm always like tinkering,
Mm-hmm.
on the piano and there there was still some of that vocal group, which was called totally a cappella, by the way. That's how creative we were. Um, and and so I had a buddy who kind of he was like, we need basses in the college choir. And I bet you they
Mm.
would just give you a scholarship just to come sing bass for the choir. I was like,
Wow.
really? All right,
Really?
well, I'll do that.
Because
And
at
then
that point, you just went to college and you did not have a scholarship.
I had just like some, like regular educational
Right.
scholarships
Like
and stuff like
subsidizing
that.
it, but not like a
Yeah,
scholarship.
nothing
Okay.
related to music at all.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so I'm like, well, if they'll give me money, sure.
I guess.
And then so I went and auditioned for them, and then of course they were like, well, we'll give you more money if you also do the show choir.
Sure.
And so I ended up doing that. But it just kind of reminded me like, okay, I really do love music and I miss it when I'm not doing it. Also, then late in high school, I guess it was, I saw Rockapella on a Folgers commercial.
Ooh,
And I was like,
yes.
who are these guys?
Also, what a name, right?
Yeah, they nailed it.
They
Way
nailed it.
better than totally acapella.
I mean, I
Uh,
was thinking it, but you said it.
and then once I heard rockapella, I was like, "What in the world?" So I
Yeah.
went to a music store, and fortunately, they had a rockapella CD, and it was their album "Don't Tell Me You Do," and that
Mm.
was the first time I heard contemporary acapella with full time vocal percussion,
Yes, and your
and it
brain
just,
went.
oh my god, it
Mm-hmm.
just blew my mind, and now I'm hooked, and now I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
So I find a group, a startup group. These three guys had met at Berklee College of Music, and they needed a bass singer. Somewhat out of my depth. Fortunately, I got the formal training I had.
Right.
Was taught sight reading and stuff.
Right.
But these guys are like graduating from Berklee College of
Berkeley. Yeah.
Music.
They're
I'm
serious.
just a kid with a low voice and a good ear.
Right.
And so I tracked down, I probably asked Miss Close at the time, like, hey, they're asking me to like record some stuff. What do I do? Where do I go to record? And
Mm.
she introduced me to a guy named Danny Moore. So, Danny, if you see this, thank you. I definitely owe you as well. He had a
Wow.
home studio and they had sent some tracks and stuff. And they said, here, add a bass part. So, Danny tracked me.
So
And
this is your first
so,
time being guided and actually like produced.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so he kind of held my hand through that. And it landed me the gig. And
Wow.
so I moved up to Minnesota. One of the guys are from Minnesota, and there's a group called the Blenders, which are like Midwest acapella royalty,
Okay. Yeah.
um, and they were kind of winding down a little bit. They still
Mm-hmm.
do a Christmas tour every year, but they were, as happens, they were like, okay, I think we're ready to be home with our families now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but they were still getting all these calls constantly coming in. One of their members managed the group, and he was the brother-in-law of one of the guys in this band that I was joining. And so he
Mm.
said, you know, why don't we just, if you form this group and you're any good, like I'll just try to give you guys these gigs that come in.
Yeah.
great on paper. Of course, it takes a while to find your footing and be qualified enough to be able to
Sure.
go do those gigs. We filmed some like promo videos, and that got us a college agent, which was a big deal because we
Mm.
started doing showcases for NACA, which I
Yeah.
think is the National Association for Campus Activities.
Yes.
Um, and right away, we didn't like take ourselves seriously. We just, um, which is really important to me, just to have fun and just be goofy, like be yourself.
Yeah.
I can't believe we took it that not seriously, but it worked. It got us a showcase at one
Wow.
of these, at a few of these conventions. And you're just trying to impress college kids, because each school like just sends a few college kids that are volunteered to go like hire groups to come back to the school.
Right.
And so, we were goofy and fun and sounded decent. And
Approachable.
so now we're all of a sudden we're like doing a college tour.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
And I kind of told myself, I said, okay, a year from now, if this thing is really, taken off, great, let's see it through. But if not, I want to at least have, my name, face, and voice on an album that I'm really proud of.
Mm.
And I want to have made some contacts in the industry.
Okay.
And if that's like all that's happened, like I can move on. And
And did you know to what?
I had no idea.
Okay. Just move on to something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do think I have like a certain degree of fearlessness that
Love
has
that.
helped me along the way. Like a lot
Where
of
do you think
people
you get
will,
that from?
I don't know.
Was it modeled to you by one of your parents, or do you think it's just something that was in you, just like singing before you were really talking?
I actually had a cousin who was a rodeo clown. I
I'm
think they
sorry,
prefer the
what?
term. I think they prefer the term bullfighter.
But he's a
But
rodeo clown.
yeah,
What?
well, he was actually a bull rider, and then later in his career, he pivoted to rodeo clowning. I remember like being a kid, and he just had that like untamed spirit, and
Mm.
he, would like kind of breeze in and out of town and in and out of our lives. And like the family was super concerned, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. You know,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
they're like, I never know what he's doing. He's just like out there sleeping on a couch somewhere. And I was like, sounds awesome. Sign me up.
Wild
And
hair.
so I think I just had a little bit of that in me, but
Hmm.
also he inspired me. He was also a musician, and he played guitar and sang country songs. And
Got it. Free spirit.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it was
so,
modeled a little bit. You looked up to him. He was older than
yeah,
you.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Uh-huh. Makes sense.
I've never really feared the unknown, and I'm not going to stick around. I'm not going to like outstay my welcome anywhere, or
Mm.
or 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 do something that's unfulfilling, or not reaching its potential just because it's comfortable and familiar. It's like I'll figure something else out. I'll take a leap of faith.
I think
Um,
that's so key, especially for this industry, that
yeah,
being comfortable in the uncomfortable, being willing to pivot, having the courage to stick into something if it's working some and see how it goes too, not quit too prematurely. Also, there are many elements I'm finding as through lines as I talk to different people who've succeeded well in their industry and who are excellent at what they do. It, there's no straight path. It's a very winding road for everyone, but these through lines of grit, consistency, a deep knowing, a sort of inner courage, stick to itiveness, flexibility. I find that those are all characteristics of those that I've interviewed so far, and it's very fascinating to me. You're no different.
yeah. I mean, it's imperative.
Mm.
So strangely enough, you know, a year later from that point where I kind of told myself it's time to possibly make a move, the famous bass from Rockapella, Barry Carl, was retiring, and so
Wow.
I got in touch with them, and
You reached out to them.
yeah, I mean they did an open audition, and I never expected to even hear back really. I was 21 years old,
Oh my gosh.
you know, um, And so I sent in some materials, and they said, yeah, you're one of 4 people we're considering. We want to fly you down to Tampa and have you sing for us in Scott Leonard's house. And I was a total like rockapella fanboy too, So I'm
Right.
like, all right, keep it cool,
Be
act like you've
cool.
been there. Um, I didn't end up getting the gig, obviously.
Yeah, but
And
that's
looking back
so
now, I
amazing.
was like, nah, I wasn't prepared for that. I really
Wow.
wasn't. There's so many moments like this along the way where like I didn't get what I wanted, but I got what I
Mm.
needed.
Ooh, say that again.
I didn't get what
Ooh.
I wanted, but I got where I needed, and it's happened time and time again, as you'll hear as we keep trudging through this story. And so, um, I should back up a little bit. We'll Tarantino this story. So back when I'm researching my options, I also find out that cruise ships hire vocal groups,
Yes, they do.
and and so I find a company called Molyneux Entertainment that kind of had the monopoly on a cappella cruise ship gigs back then, and they would just cobble together groups and send them
Sure.
out.
Right. Oh my
So I take
gosh.
this, I signed a 6 month cruise contract.
Uh-huh.
And 3 months in, Ball in the House calls and they're like, okay, we need you like now.
Of course. Of
I'm like,
course.
I'm in Aruba.
I'm in Aruba.
Yeah.
My toes
And
are
so
sandy.
again, like fortunately for the range, I was singing a lot of high stuff on the ship as well because the other guy could cover bass.
Mm.
And so I called Molyneux Entertainment. I'm like, I need you to send me any vocalist. I don't care like what voice part it is, bass to high tenor, and we'll figure it out. So they find me a high tenor, and I'm like, great, fly him out here. I have 2 weeks. I have like from like LA to Miami through the Panama Canal to like basically teach the other guy in my group the rest of the bass parts that he doesn't know,
Right.
and then train this guy on all the tenor stuff.
So that you could
And
leave.
so I could leave and go do this other gig.
Oh, wow.
And somehow it all worked out. They flew him in, trained him. It was fine. He's a lifelong friend to this day, and we've
Oh my
continued to work
gosh.
together. Just wild. Um,
So wild.
and I immediately flew to Paducah, Kentucky. Well, actually, I flew to Nashville first, and then the band picked me up, and we had like the hour and a half drive to Paducah to rehearse.
Paducah.
And then we did a telethon that 2 million people watched. That was my first gig with Ball in the House.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile, like back at the ranch, your family, are they supporting this? Are they thinking you're like your cousin now? What's going on there?
Yeah. And let me back up to that too. I was terrified, of course, to tell my parents that I was dropping out of college
Right.
to join a startup band.
Yeah, that's not a
I was
good
like, hey,
move.
remember how I was like going to be an orthodontist and make
Right.
a lot of money? I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right.
I'm going to do something very fickle and
Yes. And
then
unstable.
unstable.
Hmm.
And to my surprise, they were like, yeah, go for it.
I freaking love that. I so admire that. That is not the norm. That is the exception to the rule. And I think that's also a through line in what I'm seeing is that kids whose parents give them the freedom to go and try and maybe even fail, but those are the kids who grow up to be the kids who will actually work out their dreams and live out their
Yeah.
dreams instead of get that quote unquote real job and live for the weekend. I
I was
think that's
encouraged
so
every step of
key.
the way. Going all the
Wow.
way back, elementary school, Miss Dehart, high school,
Mm,
Miss Close, my parents, all
mm,
of my family, just like nothing but
mm.
encouragement.
That's so
Um,
key. And it grieves my heart so much. And I'm sure it does yours also for those who are even watching and listening to this whose story is not the same. And their future, their outcome is not the same as a result. I want to say, just pause here and say it's not too late. You still can do what brings you joy, even if it's on a micro and not a macro level. But if you're a parent and you have a child who's nagging you and nurturing, asking for that nurture, like don't repeat the cycle. Let them dream. Like tell them that they can do it. Encourage them because look, I'm a result of that too, by the way. I am a happy recipient of that love, support, and undying, unfailing encouragement from my parents. And I owe where I am to them because of it. So I love that you added that. That's so important.
Absolutely. You know, it's a tricky thing for a parent too, because
Yeah, so
you also don't
scary.
want to be that parent that's dragging your kid onto American Idol who can't carry a tune and they embarrass themselves
Oh,
either.
there is that too. There
You
is
know?
that too.
So it's like
Yes.
if they actually have the ability
Mhm.
and the drive, then yeah,
Mhm.
encourage them.
Yes.
Um,
Love that. That's very practical advice.
but all of a sudden now I'm in Ball in the House. We're doing 250 shows a year.
Oh my gosh, they were no
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah.
Wow.
We opened up for Gladys Knight,
Oh
and
my word.
I mean it was, yeah. They do a lot of educational outreach as well, so they go into schools all over New England and teach
Ooh.
kids about music,
Mm.
um and so it was very much full time.
I bet you felt
Yeah.
like I have arrived. Hey mom, I made it.
I mean, I had,
Yeah.
if you're, I mean, if you're making money doing what you love, like you've made it.
You have
If you're
made it.
supporting yourself by making music, it's like you're in the 1%.
Say that again, man. Because what you said at the beginning, oh, I thought growing up in Southeast Texas, you're doing a deal or you're doing Broadway or you're nothing. It's like king or pauper. And shout it from the rooftops. I do too, because that's a lie. That is a lie.
Yeah.
And it's what keeps people not reaching for that dream because they think, well, that's insurmountable. So I guess I'll just go to dental school.
There are 1,000 gigs that any of you watching have never even heard of. I mean, just the
Yeah.
cruise industry alone, if
Yeah.
you think about all the performance opportunities on one single ship,
Yes.
there's always some sort of production show that has a handful of vocalists in there.
Yep.
Every other venue on the ship has full-time vocalists. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
there's a acapella group or whatever, and that's just one ship
Yep.
for one company. I mean, um, you know, one of those cruise lines alone has 20 plus ships, and there's
Fleets.
probably
Yes.
10 cruise lines you've never heard of. So do the
Yep.
math.
Yeah.
Just in the cruise industry alone, there are thousands and thousands of positions for musicians of any type.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And that's
love
that's
that.
just the cruise industry.
Yeah,
Then
that's
on
one.
land, there's theme parks, and
Mhm.
same story there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
entertainment companies, touring, high-end corporate shows, high-end weddings,
right.
the speaking circuit, which needs opening and close. I mean, yeah, the list goes on and on. We're not even
Yeah,
getting into the songwriting part, the music supervision part, all the back end
yeah,
pub stuff. Yeah, 100%. Which, but we're not educated in that. Like
yeah,
kids don't grow up seeing these careers. They see Taylor Swift, and God bless her for what she's doing. But that's not a representation of successful singers and musicians as a whole. That's an outlier.
right. And I'd always heard the music industry was fickle and scary,
Yeah.
and it can be, but it
Hmm.
certainly doesn't have to be, and that has not been my experience.
I love that so much.
Yeah,
So you're in this amazing a cappella group singing for millions of people, 250 shows a year. You have arrived. You're big ballin' now, supporting yourself in your early 20s, doing what you love to do. What's next?
I do it for 3 years, and then I quit, and I moved back to Southeast Texas, and I
Why?
substitute teach.
What? What happened? Why did you do that?
But for the most part, I think I was just like at the time done living out of a suitcase.
The road warrior.
It's
Interesting.
hard,
It's so
you know,
bad. Yeah.
and I mean, that's not to be taken lightly either. I think there's a lot of folks who don't realize that it's not for them until they get there. It looks glamorous from the
It
outside,
really does. Yeah.
but that's because that's the part the public sees, and
Yeah.
that is maybe 5% of the gig,
Yeah.
and
Right.
the rest of it is the travel
Yeah.
and um, the early morning press appearances and
Mhm.
and interviews and
Yep.
rehearsals and
Sound check, call time. Mhm.
all the things. And I mean, I'm sure everybody watching this has experienced that before, where you just like have a day of travel and you're exhausted and you're like, why am I so tired? I've just been sitting all day.
Yes.
But it
Yeah, that's
just
weird.
takes it out of you.
It really does.
And so imagine like doing that day after day. Every day you wake up in another city.
Yep.
um, it kind of just like wears on you a little bit.
Totally.
Even when you are cut out for it and you absolutely love it, it
Mhm.
takes a toll for sure.
Yep.
Um, and and again, I don't know. I'm not scared to make a huge change. You know,
Yeah, you
so
sure
I
aren't.
was like, okay, this the best thing that ever happened to me doesn't doesn't quite fit anymore, and that's
Mm,
okay. Let's
mm.
reset. And so I went back and I was like considering maybe going back to school. Didn't know what exactly I was going to do. But I was
Wow.
substitute teaching, and really I was just like, I was enjoying not living out of a suitcase, and I felt like I was kind of making up for lost time with a lot of my friends and family too.
Sure, sure. Maybe you
Missed a
just
lot of
missed home. You
missed a lot of
missed.
birthdays and holidays
Yeah,
and milestones and things like that.
sure.
My sister had a baby at this point, so I was having a great
Mm,
time being an uncle.
mm.
Um, and then I get a call from All New Entertainment, and they had finally landed their white whale contract with Crystal Cruise Lines, which is like the ultra luxury. And
Yes.
he had been trying to like get an acapella group on there for years and years and years, and he finally convinced them. And so he called me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm basically trying to form a super group to like impress the hell out of these people. Like, will you please be the bass?" I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds fun." He's like, "I'll pay you way more than before, and like
I would
wait
think
till you
so.
see this cruise line and wait till you eat this food." And so I went
Yeah.
and did that. And at that point, there's little reminders along the way too. It's like every time I tried to like walk away from music, like music wasn't like done with me yet. And
Mm, I
and
love
and then
that.
I would get another taste of it, and I would remember like, oh yeah, this feeds my soul. Like I just love harmonizing with other human beings.
Mm, so do I.
Um,
It's so addicting.
and but so I did that contract. Went home, substitute taught some more. Ended up doing a world cruise after that, 108-day cruise all around the world.
Wow,
Um,
that must have been cool.
but yeah, it was really amazing.
Wow.
Um, but I'm still like at this point, I'm like, did I do it? Did I do the thing? Like I really like being home, and I made it to all 50 states and all 7 continents before 30. So I'm like, I think I did it. I kind of like did a lifetime's worth of stuff,
Yeah.
in that 10 years.
Yeah, you sure did.
Um, and, and, and I, at this point in time, I had pivoted to being a producer from All New Entertainment, which is
Mm,
kind of exciting to me. You still get a
mm,
taste of it. You still get to do some traveling. Like I would
mm-hmm.
train the new vocal groups, and then I would get to take them out and install them on the ship.
Mm.
So I'm like, maybe this is just like my thing.
Like a happy medium
Maybe,
between the two.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm done, performing full time. I'll still write music always, and um, maybe I'll find a local group to do stuff with. I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
but I really kind of thought I was done. And of course,
I notice a pattern here.
the universe had other plans. So when I was in Ball in the House, we shared an agent with a group called the Alley Cats, and
Yes.
and they are a comedic tribute to the music of the 50s and 60s. Kind of my first love.
Mm.
And so they called me up while I'm sitting around substitute teaching, and they're like, "This is insane! Like you're too good to be like doing that."
Substitute teaching math. Yeah.
And they have a really cool business plan or structure, but it's almost more about the comedy, and they improv and take risks,
Mm.
and that was like heaven for me.
Yeah.
One of my loves is stand-up comedy, and I'm kind of a student of stand-up comedy. I've always been fascinated by it, and
Really
language,
interesting.
and I was always a little bit of the loose cannon in any group I sang with, um, you know, between songs. And but now it's like encouraged. Now
Yeah.
it's like half talking, half music, and the
It's part of the
audience is just
brand.
cracking up. Yeah.
Love it.
And I was hooked. Unbeknownst to me, the Alley Cats passed my information along to this fella who was starting a production company in Orange County, California, and he wanted to form a writing team. And they were like, "Well, we know a guy who's a really great writer who's sitting on his ass in Southeast Texas."
Teaching math.
And so this guy calls me up. It's like it feels like a prank call. He's
Wow.
like, "Hi, my name's Joe Bellotta. I'm starting a production company. I want to form a writing team. You're my first call. I'd love to fly you out here and just like see if we can write together and see how we gel. I'm like, all right, I don't have anything to lose. I think the Alley Cats like threw some gigs my way, like to make it give me more of an incentive to come out there.
To go there.
Yeah,
Wow. Well, how kind of them.
yeah. And so I go out there. We work well together. Keep in mind, I think I'm done with
Right.
music as a career.
For the second or third time. Yeah.
And this guy says, "All right, here's the thing. If you're willing to move here, I'll give you a house to live in. I'll give you a car to drive, and I'll pay you a salary to write whatever you want to write."
No, that
Yeah,
never happens.
I know. And I'm
You're
like,
lying.
I promise you. And I'm like, it was like the one call that could make me, outside of maybe rockapella or something at that point, but that would make me go, all right, I'm back in. And then on top of that, he let me just like hire all my talented friends to come form this writing team. So we like ended up living in this total bachelor pad. Like it was just a dream gig for a few years. It's just me and my buddies just like writing songs and hanging out. And if we wrote a good one, then we'd go into this $2 million studio the guy built, and he'd hire session players from LA to come like make our songs sound really good. He really has a passion for country music,
Okay.
um,
Joe.
which to be honest with you, I'd sort of sworn off at this point. I mean, there was like a 10-year period where I don't know. I think partially it was what was going on in country music, but also once I discovered pop music, which was not on my radar at all, I was just like, this is what I want.
Interesting. Okay.
Country is my parents' music.
Right. For old people.
And so I didn't really pay attention to what was going on in country music until Rascal Flatts came along, and then they pulled me back in.
Got it. Yep.
But I was never interested in singing it or writing it. So but this guy always he always tended to write kind of more in the country vein. He was actually a staff writer for Charlie Rich in the '70s, I think it was. But wasn't my interest, so I'm always writing anything but country. And then he comes in one day and he goes, "All right, here's the thing. I struck up a deal with song pluggers in Nashville. I need you to start writing exclusively country music." And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so, to be totally honest, I don't recommend this, kids, but I went home and I drank a bottle of Jack Daniels and I wrote the countryest, most like redneck anthem I could possibly come up with.
Well, from what you did when you went home, it sounds like you were setting yourself up for the perfect amount of success. Bottle of Jack, pen, here we go.
My thinking at the time was, all right, if I write, like almost a caricature of a country song, like an over the top, it's like Johnny Cash meets Ray Stevens.
Yeah, making fun of it.
If I write just the most redneck thing I can possibly think of, well then after this, like a normal like pop country song won't feel like too much of a compromise or something.
Right. Yeah, I get you.
That song to this day might be my most successful original.
And it's called?
It's called Champagne Taste on a Beer Budget. Hard to say.
Wow.
Because, it was like one of the first songs, like originals that Home Free cut. And it was like one of the first originals that kind of did well for Home Free. At this point in time, I probably have other originals that have done better. But for like the longest time, it was like everybody wanted to hear that song. It was always the number one request for originals.
It's your OG. So interesting. And you were drunk on a bottle of Jack, rebelling
song,
against
like,
the assignment.
Tongue in cheek almost, like defiantly wrote this song and it worked.
You kind of threw it away. How long did it take you to write that song, out of curiosity?
So quick.
15 or under?
Hard to say. Time's real hard to keep track of under that state.
With a bottle of Jack, right?
I think I wrote the chorus in like 2 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Those are the best ones.
And then I wrote a verse pretty quickly after. So, I mean, I'm guessing the whole thing was under 15 minutes. And then, I waited on the rest of it. I took it in the next day and finished it with the guy who owned the studio.
Okay.
Because I knew he'd be excited about it too, and I knew he'd fast track it.
Right.
And
So
so
funny.
so after that I start like writing almost exclusively country music. And the funny thing was, I'd record these demos and we'd send them off to the song pluggers in Nashville, and they'd say, "Not country enough for you. Like twang, sing it twangier." And I'm like, okay. So, and it got to be like where I almost felt like I was doing a character. Like this
Yeah.
can't possibly be what they're looking for.
Hmm.
And then they'd be like, okay, now it sounds good. And so, I do that for, I don't know, a year or something. And along the way, this guy's like, you should be a country singer. Like, what are you doing? Like,
Right. You're
and
doing the
I'm like,
demos, you're writing the songs.
thanks, but no thanks. And, and then one day he comes in, he's like, I've been really thinking it over and I've decided I'm not going to pay you anymore unless you be a country singer.
Oh, he really had you.
Yeah.
What were you gonna do anyway? Like
Right.
turn him
I was like,
down?
well, I kind of like living here. I kind of like this house and this car and all my buddies and this
Right.
studio and this salary. And I'm kind of just doing it anyway. Like
Right.
I'm already singing almost exclusively country on these demos.
Right.
And so I was like, okay,
You got
what
me.
do we have to lose? But at the end of the day, he like wanted it for me more than I wanted it, you know?
Wow, Tim.
And and
Wow.
so uh around this time, Home Free had gotten in touch with me because I just had a reputation in the industry for kind of having this database of vocalists, from
Mm,
the Alley Cats to the cruise ship world to all the groups I had performed with through the years, and just
right.
all the networking I'd done too.
Yeah.
And they were going to go on their very first tour ever.
Home free.
Um, yeah, Home
Okay.
Free. And so they were looking for a bass singer, and they said, "Do you have any recommendations?" And I gave them 5 names, and it didn't. None of those panned out. And they
Why
said,
didn't
"Is
they
there?"
just ask you if they knew that you sang bass?
They knew I had a sweet gig, and I think they just like, I don't want to sound egotistical or anything, but I was kind of a name in the acapella world at this point.
So they thought too much of you probably to ask
Yeah, I
at
mean
first.
it was pretty small potatoes. They all had regular jobs, and
Okay.
Home Free had been a hobby up to that
Mm,
point. The 5 guys I sent them like didn't pan out, and then they said, "Is there any possible way you would come do this?" And they said, we know you got this like solo country thing going on. Like, we'll learn one of your songs, we'll sell your CD at our shows. And the guy I was working for really liked that idea.
of course
So
he did.
he encouraged me to go do it.
Wow.
Because it's so funny at this point in time. I think I'm kind of done with the contemporary acapella thing. And
Every time.
I know. And so I'm like, all right. So I go do it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Of course. It was like,
Yep. Bit by
it's
the
like
bug
what I
again.
wanted to do when I was a
Yeah.
teenager.
Right.
Um, and I'd sort of forgotten again,
Mm,
how good it
again.
felt to do that. Um, they're very funny guys as well. So there's a lot of comedy in their show. It was like a little tighter, a little more scripted, and then they have me, the loose cannon, you know, going off book and embarrassing them from time to time.
Sure.
They're sweet Midwestern boys with clean sensibilities, and occasionally I would say something that would turn the audience and my bandmates red. Um, but then after that, I went back to Southern California, and they went back to their jobs. Not too long after that, um, yeah, just sort of it felt like the whole thing had run its course in Southern California, and at the end of the day, that guy wanted it for me more than I wanted it. I also have never been interested in being a solo artist, really.
That's
Like I've
fascinating to
always
me.
wanted to be like part of an ensemble, like I want to make music with other people, and I want to harmonize. Like I don't want to be a front man.
It's the harmonies for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so at the time, Home Free was like trying to twist my arm to move to Minnesota and get a part-time job.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, I'm also like, sorry, I'm not going to move up there and like get a part-time job
Yeah, fund it. When,
and
especially
so,
when you've been like living for free and being paid to do it.
Right.
for years.
And so, I told him, I was like, you guys keep working at it. Like, let me know when it's full time
Mhm.
and when I don't have to live in Minnesota. Like, if you'll let me
Right.
fly up from somewhere else, then I'll do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So basically, yeah, that happened like a little while later, and it timed out pretty perfectly. I was just ready to make a move, and
Wow.
girlfriend I was dating at the time had a job opportunity in Dallas, and again, I was feeling like, okay, I need to get back to Texas and kind of reconnect with friends and family, and so we did. So I told him free, all right, let's do it. Left that sweet, cushy gig in Southern
Sweet
California
deal.
to basically join another group that is they're doing well, but they weren't doing as well as the group I had left in 2006. Like I
Right.
left 250 shows a year, and
Yeah.
and uh, and so I now I'm flying it from Dallas and doing stuff with Home Free, and maybe 2 years after that we go on the sing off, and the
Wow.
rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah.
But there's one other funny little quirk to this, because Home Free pre sing off was just kind of your standard contemporary a cappella group.
Mhm.
They were not a country group.
Really?
Yeah. And so when we auditioned for the sing off, our first song was Life is a Highway, which is a classic rock song, but
Mhm.
everybody
Yep.
knows the Rascal Flatts version.
Of
So
course.
it's thought of as a country song.
Yes.
Our second song is Your Man by Josh Turner. It's a country song, but
I'm
we're
seeing the
really only
theme.
doing it to show me off, because up to this point, the sing off hadn't featured a bass really. So we
Right.
thought it set us apart.
Totally did.
And, and, uh, and we also have, Austin had joined the group like less than a year prior.
Hmm.
Um, and he obviously brings a huge country flair.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Crazy timing.
so the way the sing off works is, the touring producers, or the people that audition you, basically they narrow it down to like 20 groups, and then the TV producers pick their favorite 10 out of that. And so the people auditioning for say, let me throw something at you. How would you feel about being a country group? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now.
You can't run from it.
I can't. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
they say, we're like, well, we wouldn't necessarily be crazy about that idea,
Tim in
because
particular.
it's not what we do.
Right.
And they were like, well, what was your third audition song going to be? And please don't say Train or Jason Mraz. It was going to be a Train song.
No.
And they're like, we don't want to hear that.
Because
They're like,
everybody was doing it.
they're like, do you do any other country really? And like thinking back to like what we could do that would actually impress them. And we're like, a year ago, we learned We Shall Be Free by Garth Brooks for a corporate show, performed it exactly one time, and haven't touched it since. And they said, go out in the hallway, polish that up, come back in, sing that for us. And so we did that. And they said, no guarantees, obviously, but we are 99% sure that if you commit to being our token country group, that you will be on television in front of 10 million viewers.
Did they literally say token country group?
Pretty much, yeah. It's TV. It's
Oh
reality
my
television.
gosh.
They're just like looking to check boxes, and like, who's gonna
A
fill it
hundred
in?
percent. But like
You
it's
know.
just when it's so obtuse, it's like, really? You're really gonna actually say it? Like, be a little
Well, just the
more.
fact that they're like asking us to do something that we don't do.
Right. Oh, well, that's
And we
classic
know that
reality
there's no
TV.
going back,
Right,
because
right.
it's like we're
Because
gonna perform for more people in this first episode than
mm-hmm.
the entirety of our careers up to this point. So it's like
Right.
we're a country group after this. So we go home,
Yep.
argue about it.
Arguable.
Two of us vote no. You can guess where I was in
Of
that.
course. Two
Two of us vote
hands.
yes, and
Wow, that
and
sucks.
then there was a conflicted fifth party who, at the end of the day, was not excited about it, but was like, I can't argue with this kind of publicity.
Right. Nor should he. The poor tiebreaker.
Yeah,
Oh, that's horrible
he
for him.
voted yes, so we went on the show. Thank God I was outvoted.
Yeah.
Like I've
Right.
been on the wrong side of so many votes, and you know what I always kind of tell kids and aspiring musicians is that my greatest life lesson is to listen to the universe and stay out of your own way.
Mm,
Because I had quit a cappella music probably 5 times. I had quit country music once already. When I finally gave in and did both of those things, it got me a record deal in my 30s,
that's
and
so good, Tim.
took me to heights that I'd never even considered.
I just got goosebumps all over because that's another through line too. Like leaning into the door that's open that you really never wanted to walk through.
I mean, I look back now and there's just along the way, just so many signs that this is what I should be doing.
But I just think that, there's so much that can be learned from just what you last said, that whole I don't know why I ran from it, but when I finally stopped running and just leaned into it, all of these amazing things happened. And I think it's really important to note that you joined Home Free what, like 2009?
Yeah, something like that.
All right.
Probably full time and like 11.
Okay. So, but for all intents and purposes, 2009, and you've now been in it for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that you didn't go back to Texas to teach substitute teaching
Yeah.
instead of. Like you finally, it's so fascinating to me. This whole story of yours has been this through line of I did this and then I went home and I kind of like meandered and did something way out of left field. You did that multiple times. That this thing that you ran from, that you finally leaned into, you're sticking with now for over a decade.
Yeah. Well, and
That is
I
amazing.
owe Joe Bellotta, who's also no longer with us. I owe him such a
Oh.
debt of gratitude because he made me fall back in love with country music. He, um, made me like learn how to like authentically write country music
Hmm.
and learn how to sing it all over again.
Wow.
Because I had like kind of rejected my southern twang.
Yeah, your
And
roots.
so if it weren't for him, I would have been unprepared and ill-equipped for that opportunity when it came.
What an amazing blessing. There were those key people in your life that just kept redirecting your steps
Yeah.
and ordering your steps in the way that you should have gone, even when
Yeah.
you kind of ran from it. There are probably many other Tims out there or potential Tims out there listening to this. What would you say to someone listening to this who's just like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of jealous of you, Tim. I'm out here really trying and never going back to sub and never going to a school for something different, and yet, I'm still struggling, or I haven't had that Joe Bellotta in my life. I'm my own Joe Bellotta. What would you say to someone like that?
Um I would say first of all, you have to love this so much. You have to love it enough that you'd be willing to do it for free.
Mm,
Um Otherwise, don't bother.
mm.
But if you do love it that much, then like don't let anything or anyone stand in your way, including yourself.
Ooh, ooh,
Um,
definitely.
and just rely on other people. Trust people. Network is the main thing.
I agree.
Um, it's like I said, it does take a certain amount of fearlessness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird thing to get up in front of your peers and bare your soul in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, so I would also say if there's a young person watching this who loves performing but is terrified of it, um, something else I learned along the way is that the audience is on your side. A lot
Yes.
of times, you tend to like view them as adversaries, but I want you to think about what it's like when you're in the audience. Like you're never rooting for the person to fail that you're
It's
watching.
so true. A
You want
hundred
them
percent.
to do a good job, and you believe they will. That's why you're
Yes.
there watching.
Yes.
So
100%.
just remember that. I would encourage you to view the audience as your ally.
Love that.
Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, it's just you, you just you gotta work your butt off. That's all there is to it. And my wife reminds me like regularly how hard I work because
Mm,
it's because when you're don't get me wrong, it does feel like a job sometimes,
sure.
but I do sort of like feel like I've had it easy along the way. And I think
Mm,
it's just because it started out as a hobby.
yeah.
And and I started getting paid to do this thing that I was doing for free and just loved.
Hmm.
Um, but I have to remind myself that that part is just 5% of it,
Yep.
and the other 95% of it is hard work and determination.
Yep. Hustle.
Um, I am fortunate that Home Free persevered through those first 10 years
Hmm.
when most groups would have stopped. They have some horror stories,
Yes.
where they were like literally losing money on gigs and stuff. And they asked themselves, like, what are we doing? Like,
Right.
should we not do this?
Yeah.
And the biggest key is just keep going no matter what. Like,
Mm,
again, if you love it that much, then just keep going.
yeah. I love that.
Um,
That's such good
and
advice.
keep honing your craft and like collaborate. And you might find somebody that pulls some magic out of you that you didn't even know you had in you.
Ooh.
Don't be scared of change either.
Right. 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 Right.
Now listen, i
Yeah.
i should say that I would like to say I've learned my lesson,
Okay.
but I voted against doing the sea shanty medley,
No, you
which
didn't,
is
Tim.
which is
No, you
now
didn't.
our most viral release of all time.
I'm not gonna lie. You're not the best decision maker I've ever met. Like, I'm
I'm
sorry, but
not.
by the end of this, I have to tell you, like,
I'm not. I'll tell you why. So, like sea shanties became popular again somehow mid-pandemic,
I feel like maybe
and
Pirates of the Caribbean also helped.
yeah, and but particularly that one song, "The Wellerman,"
Yes,
just like
obsessed. So
caught
good.
fire, and
Yeah.
like everyone was doing their version of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So our team was like, "You guys should do your version of that."
Yep.
And we were kind of like, well,
Wow.
like it just feels like, okay, we're just doing that same thing everyone else is doing. And also we sort of felt like we had missed the wave, you know?
That's true. I
And
remember you
so
guys
like we
saying
didn't
that.
want it to feel like a desperate attempt to just kind of like capitalize
Yeah.
on the zeitgeist, like on the tail end of the interest too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we ended up all agreeing that we should do something different if we're going to do it. So Adam Chance, our baritone, is actually a sea shanty fanatic. and
Really?
uh and Rob, our tenor, has made fun of him for this for years. So
Oh, that's
who's
so
laughing
funny.
now?
Who's laughing
Um,
now? That's
so
hilarious.
we basically just turned a chance, and we were like, why don't you just pick like four more of your favorite shanties, and we'll do a medley of them. We'll start out with this Wellerman that's kind of iconic right now, but then we'll
Mm-hmm.
take a trip through the world of shanties.
I love that you
And
repurposed that and made it your own. That was, I think, truly, that was part of the secret sauce.
we recorded all this stuff in our closets. We filmed on our phones.
Yep.
A videographer cobbled that together, and it's our most viral release of all time. I mean, it dwarfed like our humongous, like Ring of Fire and Elvira
Yeah.
and God
Yep.
Bless the USA and all these things that are way more successful than we ever thought would happen.
Right.
And this video that I voted no on, like, not only just like caught fire around the world, it became a dance challenge in Asia.
What?
Um, yeah,
That I did not know.
but on
Okay.
but on the strength of all that, a major video game company, Ubisoft, reached out to us and said, "Would you guys please write a sea shanty for our new video game, Skull and Bones?"
Whoa.
And we've got some real nerds in the group and gamers, so like for them, it's just like
Oh,
a
the
dream come
Mecca.
true, just like a
Yeah.
bucket list thing they didn't even know was possible.
The mothership called them home.
Yeah, and of course we turned to Adam Chance. We're like, "All right, Shanty guy, what you got?" And
Right,
it's so funny
Shanty
because
man.
that's his first home free original,
Oh my word.
and
It was like he was practicing for it all his life and didn't
he's been.
realize it.
That's what he said. He's like, "I've been training for this my whole life, guys."
It's like, I'm so ready.
Yeah, and
Ah, I
and
love it.
so yeah. I mean, it's in the game. It wasn't supposed to be. It was just supposed to be like like a used in the ads, like the commercials and
Hashtag
stuff. And they
royalties.
liked it so much they're like, "We're putting this in the game." And
Oh,
it's like the
amazing.
one of the first things you hear, like when you start playing the game and you set sail, you hear Home Free singing an original sea shanty. And all because I was outvoted.
All because you said no and lost. It's extraordinary that you have had good people in your life to outvote you every single time at every single
100%.
turn.
And I will say too, to like the aspiring musicians, like it takes a degree of humility, like
Mm.
be willing to be wrong and
Ooh,
be
so
willing
good.
to be outvoted,
Ooh.
like
Yeah,
everything
because
I've
you still
done.
did it. That's true.
Yeah,
You didn't throw a hissy fit. You're like, all right, I guess we're doing country. That is so important, actually, that you were humble enough to be wrong and be outvoted and still do it and do it to the best of your ability too, not just kind of do it. That's so good, Tim.
I've carved out, yeah, this little niche that I didn't even realize was possible when I was a teenager in Southeast Texas.
Yeah.
And again, I'm on a path that wasn't even like in my field of vision
Yeah, you didn't
at
even know it
that
existed. You
age.
just kept
Yeah.
doing what you were designed to do and just kept doing it and kept doing it. And I love that. So tell me, before we go, where can the fans find you? Where can our listeners follow and find you? And you've got an album that we will be sharing in the description box below as well. Tell us about those things, how we find you.
Yeah, I've got a couple of solo projects. Of course, check out Home Free. Go to homefreemusic.com.
Yes.
I'm sure your viewers are familiar already. And thank you
Yes.
so much, by the way, for exposing people to our
My
music and
pleasure.
reacting to our stuff.
So worthy. So worthy.
We're going to be, I mean, we're always touring, so we'd love for people to come out and see what we do. It's a
Yeah.
4D experience, I say. Even
Ooh.
if you've heard us and you like what you hear and see, like it's still a whole other experience to experience it live.
Wow.
Um, but you can also go to timfaustmusic.com. Faust is
Okay.
spelled with an O. I'm on Patreon. I release
Okay.
stuff there constantly that I don't release publicly.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's
Most of
good
what
to
I,
know.
I put there actually is originals that I haven't that I'm not really releasing
Oh, super
unless Home Free
cool.
cuts it.
Okay.
But my album, The Best That I Can Do, is still available. If you want to go hear
Nice.
me and my fledgling country
Your country
days.
era. Yeah.
And then a couple of years back, I also released an album called Pieces of Me Volume One,
Okay.
which is all songs from the 1950s and 60s.
Oh, wow.
It's all doo-wop, it's all a cappella, and I sing all the parts.
Oh, super cool. I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, and there's a
Very
couple of
cool.
videos for that as well out. So
Awesome.
dive
Well,
down the rabbit hole, folks.
yeah, guys, you'll see the stuff in the description box. Click on all of it. You won't be disappointed. Tim, you're such an amazing vocalist, musician, and person. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Guys, I really hope that you've gleaned a lot of beautiful nuggets of wisdom and encouragement, inspiration, and hope from Tim and everything he said. Stay tuned for the next Truth with Tara. Tim, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.